Hello everyone, welcome back. This is module 5, roundup. We are here again, this time with enforcement and factors that lead individuals and organizations to comply with rules, to comply with regulations. So congratulations as usual for completing the module, and thanks for your active participation in the different sections of the module. Now, in the small group discussion forum, you were asked to consider how the 14 compliance questions apply to rules related to filing tax returns. And in trying to summarize what you consider to be important and what you emphasized as the most important factors, I think it's useful to distinguish by unit of analysis. So basically, if you focus on the individual, at the individual level, I think you mostly agreed with the fact that knowledge and capacity to comply are the most important factors. While if you focus on regulation per se, you identified, I think, two main factors. One is complexity, so that sometimes fiscal systems are so complex that individuals are often unsure on how they should file tax returns, and sometimes even when or whether they should file tax returns. And this might lead them, of course, to file late or not at all, maybe. Now, of course, this factor of complexity is strictly related to knowledge and capacity, because you might think, and I think it's reasonable to say, that the higher the complexity, the higher the levels of knowledge and capacity you need in order to comply with the rules. And so the first factor at the regulation level was complexity, while the second factor was related to severity of sanctions. And so, for example, you observed that in some countries, like in the UK, for example, you made this example, fines for submitting late are quite small. And the idea would be that if these fines were increased, in the end, this might result in higher levels of compliance. And I think this is also related to another factor that you kind of emphasized, which is risk of sanctions. So severity of sanctions on the one hand and risk of sanctions on the other hand. And here I found particularly interesting the example from New Jersey, New York, and Connecticut, and what happens if you move from one side of the Hudson River to the other. I found this particularly interesting. Now, what I also found interesting and somehow fascinating was that you did not talk much about regulators' reputation. And so you didn't seem to pay attention to the way in which taxes are collected and used. But you might think that in those countries where governments and regulators are seen to be collecting taxes or to be using taxes poorly and in an unfair manner, you might think that individuals would be less likely and less prone to comply with tax rules. So, sorry, but I'm not saying that it's justified, but in terms of compliance and factors that might lead people not to comply with rules, regulators' reputation is also another factor. In the class-wide discussion forum, you were asked to apply the content of the module to your own context, or a context of your own choice, and there were many interesting examples. So here I can see the electricity market, or littering, water restrictions, the dairy industry, and others. I think it's clear from all of these examples that it's hard to to find the right approach to ensure perfect compliance. And even if you use a combination of deterrence on the one hand, or compliance-based approaches on the other hand, it's difficult to ensure perfect compliance. Okay, now in the coming week, the module 6, you can expect to talk about the meaning of regulatory quality. And so you will see how difficult it is to define regulatory quality, and then we will go through advantages and disadvantages of some tools that are supposed to enhance this regulatory quality, like cost-benefit analysis and regulatory impact assessment. And I'm looking forward to that.